The tension between SpaceX and the FAA is escalating like never before, with both sides taking bold moves to confront each other head-on. The FAA has been relentlessly throwing endless roadblocks in SpaceX's path. In their latest action, they've proposed a fine targeting SpaceX's Falcon system, sparking SpaceX's intent to fight back with legal action. Yet despite the rising conflict, the hardware tests at Starbase remain full steam ahead. Let's find out everything in today's episode. Starship, the most powerful space system ever developed within the U.S., and arguably all of humanity, has been advancing at a breakneck speed. However, its development and testing have been met with major regulatory roadblocks. The FAA's repeated delays in approving test flights have frustrated SpaceX and many supporters of private space exploration. Recently, the FAA delayed Starship's fifth test flight, pushing it back to at least late November 2024. In response to the FAA's decision, SpaceX issued a pointed update, openly criticizing the agency for the delays and the complex permitting process. The company argued that these holdups are not only slowing down the development of Starship, but also could negatively impact the U.S.'s competitive position in space exploration, especially as Starship has been selected to land humans on the Moon in the next 2 years. On the FAA's side, while they publicly insist on maintaining a great relationship with SpaceX, they haven't hesitated to impose penalties on the company, which can be seen as a retaliatory move. Recently, the FAA proposed a significant fine against SpaceX, specifically targeting the company's Falcon rocket series. According to an announcement on the FAA's website, the agency has proposed a civil penalty of $633,009 against SpaceX for allegedly failing to follow its license requirements during 2 launches in 2023, in accordance with statutorily set civil penalty guidelines. The FAA further detailed that in May 2023, SpaceX submitted a request to amend its communication plans related to a launch license from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. These amendments included adding a new launch control room at Hangar X and removing the T2-hour readiness poll from their procedures. However, on June 18, 2023, SpaceX used the unapproved control room for the PSN Satria mission and did not conduct the T-2-hour poll as required. As a result, the FAA proposed a fine of $350,000, $175,000 for each alleged violation. Following that, in July 2023, SpaceX submitted a request to amend its explosive site plan related to the launch license from Kennedy Space Center in Florida. This proposal included the construction of a new rocket fuel farm. However, on July 28, 2023, SpaceX used the unapproved fuel farm for the EchoStar 24 Jupiter mission. As a result, the FAA proposed a civil penalty of $283,009. Let me break this down for you. It seems like SpaceX made some minor changes to their infrastructure and procedures and filed the necessary paperwork for those changes. However, they proceeded with their launches before the FAA had approved the paperwork. What's interesting here is that between May and June 2023, SpaceX successfully carried out 16 Falcon 9 launches, showcasing their incredibly high launch cadence. And yet, during that time, the FAA seemingly couldn't keep up with approving some facility additions in a timely manner. For SpaceX, Falcon 9's launch schedule is tightly packed. Delaying one launch could lead to a domino effect, causing widespread delays and significant financial and progress losses. SpaceX didn't ignore the regulations. They submitted all the necessary paperwork for their modifications. The issue lies with the FAA taking too long to process these documents. You see, the FAA took over a year to issue penalties for alleged violations from 2023. In some ways, this penalty from the FAA is almost laughable. It's like saying, SpaceX followed the rules and submitted their paperwork, but we took too long to handle it, so now we're penalizing them. Lastly, in its statement, the FAA emphasized SpaceX has 30 days to respond to the FAA after receiving the agency's enforcement letters. In response to this action, Elon Musk reacted strongly, marking a new escalation in the already tense relationship between SpaceX and the FAA. Musk issued a sharp statement on social media. "I am highly confident that discovery will show improper, politically motivated behavior by the FAA." He doubled down on the core issue by responding to another tweet, saying, "The fundamental problem is that humanity will forever be confined to Earth unless there is radical reform at the FAA." At the peak of the tension, Musk declared that SpaceX would sue the FAA. SpaceX will be filing suit against the FAA for regulatory overreach, Musk announced, signaling a major turning point in this confrontation. For a company the size of SpaceX, a $600,000 fine can be considered insignificant. It's almost like SpaceX paying a speeding ticket and moving on to save valuable time for their important projects. However, Musk's decision decision to pursue litigation shows that this isn't just about the fine, it's about principles and ensuring the company's future operational timelines aren't hampered. Legal battles are inherently long and costly. If SpaceX really goes through with this lawsuit against the FAA, we could be looking at a loud, public legal showdown in the coming months. This will certainly have an impact on the development of the Starship project, SpaceX's most ambitious spacecraft to date. It seems like SpaceX is channeling all its frustration over the additional 2-month delay for Starship's 5th test flight into this lawsuit. With the timeline already so behind, it's fair to say they've reached a point of having very little left to lose. But there's another theory worth considering. This move could act as a wake-up call, sounding the alarm for the entire space industry and government about the regulatory changes that are urgently needed. This lawsuit might pave the way for a series of vital negotiations and adjustments. It could be the perfect opportunity to reevaluate the entire legal framework governing commercial space activities, leading to necessary reforms that will drive the industry forward. The conflicts here aren't just between the FAA and private launch companies. Even NASA, the U.S. National Space Agency, likely isn't thrilled with how the FAA operates. The operations and regulatory framework of the FAA have become so problematic that even Congress has had to step in, calling for reforms to change the status quo. Honestly, if an organization as bureaucratic as the FAA had existed during the Apollo era, the U.S. might have landed on the moon 2 decades after the Soviet Union. While there's no longer a race with Russia, the U.S. is now facing a new challenger, China, a nation that's rapidly advancing its space program at an astonishing pace. Clearly, the FAA is in need of a complete overhaul. However, whether or not that happens and how it happens might heavily depend on the outcome of the upcoming U.S. elections. Despite the regulatory delays, Starbase, SpaceX's launch facility in Boca Chica, Texas, never sleeps. On September 19, 2024, SpaceX conducted a crucial static fire test with Starship S-31, is the final V-1 Starship prototype designed for flight, and will be used in Flight 6. We could clearly see the clean and well-directed flame from the engines, thanks to the effectiveness of the flame trench system. This system successfully diverted the exhaust gases and shock waves away from the launch pad. Compared to earlier static fires before the flame trench, exhaust plumes used to rise up to 2/3 of the rocket's height. While those massive exhaust clouds from previous tests looked majestic and awe-inspiring, they actually made it difficult to observe engine details and posed a significant risk of damaging the test pad. The test was performed in sequence. First, the 3 Raptor vacuum engines were ignited, followed by the activation of the 3 sea-level Raptor engines, with all 6 engines firing together in unison. The static fire lasted about 8 seconds, just long enough to gather crucial data on engine performance and the fuel system. From a visual standpoint, the test appeared to go smoothly, with no unusual issues reported. Elon Musk shared some intriguing news on social media. Flight 5 is built and ready to fly. He followed up with a sarcastic remark. Flight 6 will be ready to fly before Flight 5 even gets approved by FAA. These statements perfectly reflect SpaceX's working philosophy. Rather than sticking to a strict linear process, SpaceX embraces a parallel and flexible development approach. Instead of sitting idle while waiting for FAA approvals, the company has fully utilized this time to keep pushing forward, researching, upgrading hardware, and improving infrastructure. With their current progress, the hardware for Starship Flight 6 is almost ready to fly, while Flight 5 is still awaiting its green light. I really hope Flight 5 can take off soon, so SpaceX can gather data and analyze it in preparation for Flight 6. All right, that's it for today. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more in-depth looks at the latest advancements in space technology. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.